Today, we're talking about what it will be like to live a day in the life of an indie author. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey toward publication. I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
And I'm Christina Catane, and I write Christian fantasy.
Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. This is going to be one for the books, I think, because both Tina and I are a little groggy, and we'll explain that in a minute. But good morning to Purpose Behind the Pen, who's already in our chat. We'd love to have you here. Catherine Carroll is with us as well. Good morning. Piper Dow is back. Good morning, Piper.
Yay,
We're
Piper.
so
Yay,
happy to have
everybody.
we're so happy to have everybody here. We love our live chat, but we also love those of you that listen to us as a podcast. And if you do, we would really appreciate a follow, a review. If it doesn't take too much time out of your day, would go a great deal into furthering helping us to spread the word to continuing to grow this community of like-minded believers who are also writers. So we like to start this podcast always off with one of our favorites, which is our What's Up. So this is where we check in with each other and see what's happened since last episode. So Tina, what is up with you?
Well, I am here in my favorite place in the world, the Pacific Northwest. I would rather be in Alaska, but I have no people there anymore. So I'm actually in Port Orchard, Washington, right across the Puget Sound from Seattle. And one of my favorite things about coming to the Pacific Northwest in August is the backyard harvests. Blackberries, blueberries, plums,
Nice.
raspberries. And so I have a picture for you that Jennifer's going to share. This is the current view outside of this window right now. Miss Deer out there is sharing. She's helping with the blackberry harvest. That's what she's doing. Those are blackberry bushes, and she is just having a feast right now. And she's got two little twin babies and a husband somewhere that they just wander around this neighborhood like they own it. They're not afraid of any people.
That's
like
awesome.
they are in Michigan, where I come from. Like nobody hunts them here, so they just kind of wander around and go where they want, down the middle of the road or whatever.
It's crazy to me that there's also a buck that hangs out with them, because I've never seen a buck hang out with the mama and the babies. It's always the mama and the babies.
I have never seen that either, and my mother even said that's weird. So she's not used to. I mean, normally they don't. So I kind of wonder if it's like maybe a young buck and that this was his mother.
Maybe. I wondered the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I've just been calling them mom, dad, and babies, but maybe that's not dad. Maybe that's big brother.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
So that's, and I forgot all my notes on the editing I needed to do on my manuscript in Michigan. I grabbed the wrong folder, so my writing career is kind of stalled at the moment. So that's what's up with me. What's up with you, Jen?
That's okay, because my writing career is kind of stalled too. So I have like 3 things, I think. And I was gonna just like say one of them, but I'll start with one, and I'm probably gonna just tell you guys all of them. So I went to the clinic last night, and they put me on muscle relaxers. This is very important for all of you to know, because it definitely is affecting the way that I speak right now, my thought process. But I have sciatica issues that I've been working on with a massage therapist. And I have knee problems, just my right knee. And we have discovered the knee problems is actually a sciatica problem. We don't think so. They're sending me for an MRI now, but we didn't think I had any actual knee problems. We thought it was the sciatica and the muscle that wraps around down your thigh and around your knee. I woke up, so Wednesday we went, my daughter has a boyfriend now, pretty serious guy, and we love his family, and we all got together for dinner on Wednesday night at their house. So much fun, played cards, and it was great. But it started bothering me there, and by the time I got home, it was really sore. So I used this massager thing that I have and took a bunch of ibuprofen, went to bed. Next morning I couldn't walk. Could not walk yesterday. Like, it felt like my knee was gonna fall apart. It's not like it's just weird. It feels like something is trying to pull the kneecap off of my leg. And so went to the clinic. They gave me muscle relaxers. It already feels better. So, but I need, I got a lot of work to do. So I apologize for my stumbling across words and me being a little bit slow intellectually today, but that is the reason there. The other thing that has been happening with me, I feel like that's taking up almost 100% of my time, is the IRS. This is my time to I'm going to vent. So just everybody get back, get some popcorn, or go make your breakfast. I don't care,
Wait,
but
let me grab my coffee.
get your coffee ready. So
I should have tea, but okay, go ahead.
the IRS owes me money. Yep, owes me money. And it has owed me money for months now. This money is the money I'm going to use to pay my daughter's freshman year, first semester, like, or most of it, actually more than first semester, but it's gonna pay for her to be able to go to college, what she had what's left over from after she got a really great scholarship. Um, and sh um, they don't know why it's not released yet. That shows if you go to "Where's my refund?" It shows that they've received my filing, and that's where it's been stuck for months. And so my poor tax person is like, because we pay someone to do it, so I know it was done right. Um, my poor tax person is like, "I don't know what to you just gotta call." So I call every day, and you wait forever on hold, and then you finally get a person, and I swear I keep getting the same person. I don't know how that'd be possible, but I swear it's the same person. And they are so confused, and then they say, "Well, did you get this letter, blah, blah, blah?" I said, "Yes, I got a letter." It does not tell me anything. It just says that my basically the same thing that the website says. I just wanna know why is it not being processed? Why is it being held? And then she'll come back and she'll be like, "Well, it's being held." I'm like, "Why?" And then she'll let me give me a few more minutes. And this will go on for half an hour to an hour. And then 2 different times they've just hung up on me. Just hung up on me. And then you go to call back and then I always get the message, "Due to high volume of calls, we can't take your call right now." In the middle of the day when they're supposed to be taking calls. I don't know what to do, Tina. I'm at this point where it's like, I don't know what to do. Like, who do you report the IRS to? Like, there's nobody that you can, like, go to and say,
Yeah.
"This
I
person."
wonder if there's like a local IRS office where you could like go in and park yourself and say, "Give
Does
me
that even
answers."
does that even exist anymore?
I don't know.
That's a good
That's just
question.
an idea.
I
I'm
don't
assuming they have to have an office somewhere in Michigan.
I mean, at this point, I'd go to Ohio. I'd go to Illinois. I would drive somewhere,
Let's
like,
get
and
on a
sit.
plane and go to Washington D.C. and sit in the lobby
Seriously.
until they get. Sorry,
Bring my cooler in, I'll sit there and just eat my
you
lunch
can
all
go
day. I'll just
Julia Sugarbaker on them.
I mean, that's the thing, and I haven't Julia Sugar Bakered anybody. I have been so nice because it's like that's gonna sound terrible, but, like, not that I wanna be mean to people, but I do, I get fed up, and then the Julia Sugar Baker comes out. But it's like, I've been so good because it's like, these people are controlling my money, and it's not a small amount, but it's also not a ginormous amount, right? Just file my taxes. Just release my money to me. So that's why I'm sharing all of this with all y'all is I really, really could cover everybody's prayers because I think that's all I can do at this point is to pray about it. Pray for my knee because we do have to move my daughter in soon, and I'm praying that I don't have to have surgery. The clinic seems to think that I have a meniscus tear. Um, but it comes and goes, so I don't think that's that. So I'm praying that it's not surgery, praying for my knee, and then please everybody join me in prayer um for this IRS issue. Catherine Carroll says there is an IRS office in downtown Flint, according to Google. Like one I can go into. Why has my tax person not told me this? I'll go spend a whole day. I seriously will pack a cooler and I will just go in and I will sit down there. All right, that's probably happening. But please still pray for me because I need the prayers for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Pray for
All
you.
right, all
And I
right,
should probably mention that the reason I'm groggy is because I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning because I'm on the West Coast now.
yeah.
So we're both groggy, so this should be fun.
Now we have a whole new appreciation for what um oh my gosh. I got the name Cher in my head, and I know her name is not Cher.
Uh,
Our good friend out there,
Michelle.
Shell. Sorry, Shell. It's the drugs. I swear it's the drugs. I know your name. We
I
have a new
didn't know where you
babysitter,
were
Shell.
going with that,
I
so that's
know.
why it took me a minute. I was like, share what?
Everyone thinks that late night Jen is fun. I'm only can imagine what drugged up Jen is going to be like. Piper says that she's been working on a new book. Yay. And also making lemon syrup to make galaxy color changing lemonade. What? She said to check
Check
Pinterest.
Pinterest.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to check that out. Purpose Behind the Pen says she's in the final countdown mode for book 17. That's awesome. Catherine says that her What's Up is making good progress on her book that's coming in October. That's exciting, Catherine. Piper says the humidity is so high right now, it keeps setting her smoke detector off. Oh, really? Do you not have your air conditioner running? That would be the worst. I remember growing up, like literally around the corner from where I am right now, in the summer the humidity was just miserable. Like staying all night laying there, just feeling like it was just wet. Ugh.
When I was a kid, we lived in Alaska, which has no humidity.
Mm,
I'm sure there's humidity, but not anything like that. And we would go visit my grandparents in Minnesota.
mhm.
And see, I can't even say Minnesota without a Minnesota accent. But um, their house was like an old farmhouse, and we had to sleep in the attic. And there was no air conditioner. I don't even think there was a fan. And I
Mhm.
just remember there was this little window about this big, and the bed was pushed up against it, and I would open it, and I would get as close to the window that I could as I could, just praying for a breeze.
Yeah.
Except for the problem was that every 3 hours a train, which
Oh,
was the next block over,
oh
which
no.
and there was like a main the Mississippi River was right there, like 2 blocks over, and then the train
Mhm.
was 1 block over, and then the where they had to go over the street by the Mississippi River was like 3 blocks, but in
Oh
that
wow.
direction. And so the train whistle would go off
Oh my
every
word.
and it was right by the window. So yeah, I didn't sleep much.
Goodness.
And can we just talk about the oh, she opened the door. I was like, your dog's like in the window of the door like she's in jail or something, like looking through the bars.
If you were watching the video, you will see that we still don't have a door handle on my office door. My office has been finished for a very long time, but I still haven't put a door handle on.
I
So
was feeling
Molly,
sorry for her. I was like, look at her looking through the window like she's in jail.
I can't really move my equipment for you to see right now because I might disconnect myself.
Yeah.
But in my desk behind me is a rug. It's actually an old bath rug that has memory foam on it that I used to keep under this desk, and she used to try to jam herself underneath here and move my feet to get. So I put it under that desk, and that's her bed. She thinks this is her bedroom, I guess. But yeah, I saw her too. She kept walking in the hallway as if she was waiting for the door to open. She just finally opened it herself. So we'll see how this goes. She's
Sorry,
usually
that was a total rabbit trail.
that's
Like in the
okay.
middle of a sentence, I said, your dog.
um SL Parent says smoke has been keeping us indoors. It's giving us headaches. Is there wildfires again this summer?
Oh
I
yeah.
don't watch the news
Oh
at all.
yeah. They're all over.
Really?
There's some in
Ugh,
Washington, but we haven't really seen any smoke
oh, wow.
here. But I'm sure that there will be. I
Yeah.
wonder, where are you, SL? I'm trying to remember. I thought she was in like Idaho or
hmm Piper
Iowa
s-
or something like.
Piper says I hadn't even thought of the AC. Are you kidding me? Can't tell if she's being sarcastic or not. Like, oh, I should turn the AC on. Like that's
Well,
my
she
literally
does
May.
live
It's
in like
like,
Massachusetts. I'm not. Isn't that where she lives? Massachusetts or Vermont or someplace like that.
yeah. But still, like, I lived in Massachusetts. We use the air conditioner. I can't tell if she's kidding with me or not. Girl, like May comes and I'm like, "Can I turn the air on yet? Can I turn the air on yet?" That's just me, but
That's right, Idaho. I knew it
Meridian,
was. I
Idaho.
knew it started with an I, and it wasn't Indiana. So
Yep. So, all right. So let's move on to the topic of the day. I think it's a great episode. We got chatting about it and thought, um, it was an idea that Tina had. And we just started talking about started kind of running with it. We're like, yeah, this would be fun to talk about. So today's episode is a day in the life of an indie author. Now, we know a lot of you are already well into your indie author careers and you have your own rhythm and how things work for you. But there are also a lot of people that stumble across us or have started listening to us that are brand new to this or haven't even started yet, but feel like this is what they want to do. So we thought this would be a fun episode to do because all of our chat always has really great advice and helps to really make our episode always so much better. So again, we're going to start off by saying that this is Tina and I coming up with this. Yours might look different, and this actually could be a pattern that you could use, um, or you can adapt it to your own thing, right? So, first of all, we're splitting our days into 3 different segments, and we're going to start with the obvious one, which we're going to starting the day. How do you start the day, Tina? Typically,
Well, I hate to ruin our outline, but I typically start the day the night before. But we can
we're
get
going to
to
get
that
to
at
that
the end.
later. Yes.
But like I think about my day starting the night before. But in the morning, I wake up, I do my devotions. Like that's the first thing I do.
Hmm.
I do Bible journaling and praying, and then I eat breakfast. And then 8 o'clock to 12 is office hours. That
Hmm.
I have, and I had to do that. I don't know. It's been a few years now that I decided I had to treat it like a real job. Not that it's
Hmm.
not a real job, but you know what I mean, like where you
Yeah.
have to punch in and
Well, but
punch out.
that's what we talked about when we first started, way before we were opening up our office hours to anyone else, when it was just the 4 of us. Like, the idea of office hours was we had just come off of a Camp Nano where the 4 of us had, like, committed to each other the mornings. We're gonna be in with for 2 hours or whatever. I think it was 4 hours actually during Nano. And when we came off of that, I was like, "Why do we stop this?"
Right.
Like, why don't we have office hours? But before we go any further, I want to say, like, I feel we need to definitely separate out the starting of the day and the writing time, because that's where I sometimes stumble. Is I'll start my day when it's my writing time, and then I either forget to do my Bible journaling or my Bible devotions, or I try to do it my first session of writing, and for me that doesn't work. I have to have my morning routine where I get my coffee, which I don't do the coffee a whole lot anymore. I do today because of the drugs, but um, where I spend my time with the Lord. I mean, literally brushing my teeth is part of my morning routine. It helps wake me up. It's kind of like my kids sometimes, if they're not doing anything, it'll be like noon and they'll be laying around. I'm like, did you guys brush your teeth? And they're like, oh, and I can't do that. Like, that's part of my, like, getting out of bed. I have to, like, have this total
Mhm.
routine. So I
This
think that,
program that I'm in calls that habit stacks,
mm,
and it's like the first thing on the list kind of triggers the second thing, kind of triggers the third thing, and
mhm.
then and you follow that routine, and it just sets you up
Yes,
for
love that.
success. Yeah.
Right. So we have the starting of your day, and then your morning writing time. So this is all like morning session, right? So
Hmm.
in your writing time, we call it office hours. I have not been doing this lately. When I did do it, is when I was the most productive. So I will say that that is for sure. Again, I want to tell you guys, like, just because we're suggesting this doesn't mean that we've mastered it. Tina is
Right.
definitely far more mastering it than I am right now. But when I follow these things, this is when I'm productive and I get my stuff done. So,
Yeah. And
um,
I'm kicking myself for forgetting my notes to do my um, editing on my manuscript. But I have been trying to be productive during those hours of the morning here, whether it's like dusting or sweeping the floors or just doing something so that I don't get out of that mindset that this is time to work
right.
between 8 and 12.
So I like that you said mindset. So let's talk about that. In the office hours, you have a mindset. This is when I'm working. But what are the things that we're working on? So the first one that I know, and no one's gonna be shocked that we say, but is the sprinting. We
Hmm.
are huge fans of the Pomodoro um method, where you sprint for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break. Sometimes we'll do 20 minutes with a 10-minute break, depends on what our needs are for the day. So that's the number one thing that we usually do in office hours is
And can I
sprinting.
just say something about the science of the Pomodoro?
Please.
Um, I was in a psychiatrist's office who was testing my son for like they do this whole battery of tests to see if they have ADHD or autism and all that. And he was very into talking about himself. And he was telling us how he worked with the University of Michigan, and he did these tests where they had students studying for the medical boards, and he had them study for 25 minutes and then walk on a treadmill for 5 and then go back to studying. So half of them did that and the other half just studied their regular way, and there
Mhm.
was a noticeable difference in the test scores
Mhm.
of the students who did that. And the key was the exercise, like the
Mm.
getting up and the moving around, which kind of resets the brain. It kind of like sticks what you've just been reading and learning and studying into like a long-term memory folder, and then it
Mhm.
resets the brain, and then you can do it again, and then so then you have like the stack of folders in your brain. If your brain was a computer, it would be
Mhm.
putting all of these 25 minutes of studying into this file for easy
Mhm.
retrieval. And they're like, so there's science behind the Pomodoro.
Yeah.
Is strong. There's
Yeah.
strong science behind it.
We talk about it in our book. Those of you that haven't haven't seen our book, The 30 Days of Writing Sprint Prompts. It's a workbook. So it's mostly places for you to write in there, and there's prompts as well. But I talk about in my chapter about the science behind the Pomodoro. So take a look at that if you're more interested. Um, the I use the Pomodoro with my kids for cleaning too, because even me, like, and I don't know if it's just our personalities, if we were ADHD, I'm not sure, but it works for us. Like, if we look at a room and we're like, oh, we got to clean, like right now, our basement, the finished part of our basement needs cleaning because a while back we had the power went out and we were worried about flooding. So we pulled everything out of our cellar where our sump pump is, and it's not made its way back in there. So it is very, and then we've been moving around it. You know how that goes, right?
Mhm.
And it's not a room that people see. So it's like, it kind of has been ignored. And I said to the girls the other day, like, we need to clean that. And everyone kind of went, oh, because they know. But if we were to set, you said 25-minute timer, we can probably have it done in 25 minutes. And when you're
I bet you
focused
can
on
have
it,
it
doing
done
it,
sooner.
yeah, probably. But then,
I used
but
Go
I also
ahead.
want to clean too, like put
Yeah.
things away, but then clean. Yeah.
I
So.
used to do this thing when my kids were small and they were all in elementary school. We did right before, it was part of our bedtime routine. I would set a timer for 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, it's a 5 minute cleanup. And I'd set the
Mhm.
timer and we'd sing that song, clean up, clean up.
Mhm.
Everybody, the whole time we would just sing the song. And in 5 minutes, because I had 4 children,
Mhm.
the house would be clean. Like, not
Yeah.
like, we didn't polish the furniture, but everything
Right.
would be picked up and it would be neat and clean. And then we would go to bed with a clean house. My
Yeah.
daughter still does that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's great. There's gotta be more science to not just the Pomodoro, but just the timer effect. Like when
Yeah.
my kids were when they still had the place things at McDonald's, right? Like that was their favorite. They wanted to go to McDonald's for lunch and be able to play. And as a mom who just needed a break, yes, I didn't, they didn't have the ball pits anymore, so it was fine. And, strengthen those immune system with all the
Eat some dirt.
whatever. Eat some dirt, it'll be fine. I know some parents never let their kids in there. I'm like, go for it. Um, but when I was ready to go, I would never say, "Come on, let's go." I would always say, "All right, kids, 5 minutes." Now sometimes that 5 minutes would turn to 20. Like it literally was just me saying, giving them a heads up that time's about to be done. And then they'd be like, "Oh," and they start playing really fast and they start running around doing it like faster. But then when I finally did say, "Okay, 5 minutes is up," they came down. Like, I never had to, like, get after my kids because I was consistent with it too. I never ever made them leave somewhere without giving them a warning. And my friends were always like, "Your kids are so well behaved." I'm like, "I think it's because I'm well behaved. It's because I have set up this pattern, and it's because they're kids. Like all of a sudden, they're
Right.
like, time is different for them. So I think a timer effect for me too. Like if I'm like, okay, I have this much time. I'm gonna go and I get more things done when I know I have only like this much time to do it. So,
I do that
so
when I'm working with my regular paid job too. I set the
mhm,
Pomodoro timer and then I take a break
mhm,
at 25 minutes. So it
yeah,
just works in so many ways. And
right.
I feel like now I almost need it to be creative.
Mm, yeah. Catherine says that she sets a timer for 30 minutes when writing and keeps her on track. She says, if I'm struggling with a scene, I set it for 10, works every time. Yeah, that's great. I think that the science though, and I don't know how long of a break you take, is you have to also have the breaks and you have to time the breaks. Because if you don't take the breaks, I'm not saying you don't do that, Catherine, but I'm saying if you don't take the breaks, then you're losing out on a ton of the science that actually helps to boost your brain up.
Right, and
So,
you gotta get up and move and get some blood
right,
circulating,
right.
yeah.
All right. So within those sprinting Pomodoro moments, we sprint writing, but there's other things you can do too. If you're not at the stage of writing, you could like sometimes I take those sprinting times and I do brainstorming and outlining. Right. Those
Mhm.
are definitely things you can be doing in your morning writing sessions. What else can you
And
do, Tina?
lately, I've been doing editing during those
Yeah.
because I've
Mhm.
done my red light, green, yellow light, green light fixes, and I know what
Mhm.
they are. So I'll take one. Like right
Mhm.
now, I'm working on the red light ones, and I probably will be forever because I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, I set the timer and I work on that fix.
All right. And then also you said to me too that sometimes you just need to think.
Yeah.
Sometimes like that's still creating, right? So tell
Mhm.
us about your decision tree, Tina.
Okay, so I have a decision tree, and it was not my idea. It was Becca Syme from Write Better Faster.
Mhm.
Has an intellection. If you're high in intellection, which a lot of writers, I think 60 or 70%, she said, of
Mhm.
writers have high intellection. Um, it's a decision tree to help you to decide whether it's time, whether you need to think or whether you need to write.
Mhm.
And I meant to bring it up before today, but I didn't do it. But I basically it says, can you think of the next scene? Can you picture the next scene in your head?
Mhm.
And if you can picture it, can you write it? And if the answer to those two things is yes,
Mhm.
then you write. If it's no, then the question is, can you write about writing? So that would be
Mhm.
like journaling about your mind, your thought process of what you want to do next. And if
Mhm.
you can do that, then you write.
Mm.
If you can't do that, and I don't remember what the first question is, but it's basically, is there something that you don't know or that you need to research or that you need to learn before you can write? And then you go
Mhm.
do that. And if
Mhm.
the answer to that is no, then you need intellection time and you need to do an
Mm.
intellection activity, which is something like washing the dishes, going for a walk, taking a shower, taking a nap, where it's kind of like the bread machine going on in the background while you're doing other things. So you don't want
Gotcha.
to do something where you need to think a lot.
Mhm.
It's like, when when I wash the dishes, I'm often like daydreaming and thinking
Yep.
about stories. And
Mhm.
same thing if I'm going for a drive in the car, just to drive
Mhm.
without anywhere to go, that'll do it too. So
Hmm.
that's basically my decision tree. And I wish I knew that first question, what exactly that first question on the no side was, but I
Mhm.
can post it. I'll post it in the Facebook group.
Okay. Great. Um and so I love that you brought up the research too, because we didn't think about that, but this is definitely something you could, because that is part of the creative process for, especially for a lot of people. Sometimes it's a rabbit hole, but sometimes the research will spark the story ideas and the things that you need. So this is another time that this is something else you could do in your morning session.
Especially someone like me, I'm high input and context. And
Mhm.
so a lot of times I need to know the context, which is huge. If I don't know the context of something, then I'm number 5, ideation. So my ideas come from the input that I'm inputting, the things I'm learning, the things I'm thinking about, all the input and the context of it all. And I
Mhm.
need all those kind of 4 things to be together when for the ideation starts firing.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So those are all great things that you could do during your morning session, but what can you not should you not do during the morning session?
Oh, administration
Yeah.
stuff.
Anything administration. We're telling you right now, day in the life of an indie, do not do anything administration. So we're going to talk about administration. Let's just kind of talk about it next. So that's morning session. Creative. Morning sessions creative. You start your day before you start your actual writing. You start your time with the Lord in your morning routine, and then you get into a writing creative session, right? All right.
Mhm.
So now we have the afternoon session. You've had your lunch, you've done whatever, got doctor appointments, whatever, and now you have your time for the afternoon session. Number one, you can write during the session. This is where this has to become like adaptable to where you are in your career. If you are just starting out, every session's a writing session. Every
Right.
session should be focused on outlining or focused on doing the research or just doing some sprinting writing. Like that's all you should focus on. So if you have morning time and afternoon time to write, again, I guess we didn't point that out. Like we're going to talk about three different sessions, but you may not have three sessions. We'll talk about
Right.
that at the end. We'll talk about that at the end. So you can do your continuation of your writing at this time right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, it also could be a good time to balance like your creative work with like revisions. Like if you've done editing in the morning, you could take this time to like rewrite or to edit like that. So that would make sense between if you have two different sessions. So
And there are times you might have two different projects going on at the same time.
true.
One where
True.
you're actively writing, and one where you're editing and revising. And so, like for me, I would do the writing one in the morning and the editing and revising in the afternoon.
Yeah, that would be me too. So, all right. The next thing you can do in your afternoon session is the administration duties. And trust us on this because we have learned ourselves over and over and over again. If you put admin duties in the morning, you will not do anything creative. You just won't. I don't know what it is about us as writers. It stumps you. You get involved with social media and you can't get out of the net of the traps you in there. You get involved in I'm just going to really quick check my advertising numbers. I'm just going to go over to advertising.amazon.com. No, no, it will suck you in and you will lose all your creativity for the day. So do not touch anything administrative until the
And for
afternoon.
anyone who has ever been around the Write Better Faster crowd,
Mhm.
like Becca Syme is always saying, almost 100% of the time when people are struggling with writer's block, which she doesn't think exists, but
Mm.
struggling to write, the number one advice: stay off of social media,
Yeah.
especially first thing in the morning. Just stay off of it because
Mhm.
it just draws you in, and your brain wants that dopamine, the
Mhm.
dopamine of continuous hits that you get. I actually hide my social media links in the folder on
Mhm.
my, the bookmark bar of my browser,
Mhm.
and the folder is entitled "You Are a Dopamine Addict."
Mhm.
That's the title, so that I remember. Oh, I'm not supposed to, because sometimes it's just so habitual, you just do it without
Yeah.
thinking. And
Piper
I
agrees with you too. She says there's so much science behind not going on social media in the morning for
right. So
everybody, right? Yeah.
if you're checking your emails or you're checking your messages, it's going to draw you into the social media, and it's going to turn on a different part of your brain.
Mhm.
And there are certain strengths that are like, they're like a love potion. This is what Terry Schott, one of my coaches, says. It's like a love potion. The first thing you see is what's
Mhm.
going to like captivate you for that
Mm.
day. And so if the first thing you see is checking your emails or checking your website or checking your social media accounts, that's going to be like the love that your brain has for that day. But if the
Mm.
first thing you see is your manuscript, I would say God's word and then your manuscript.
Right. Because you think about the love of your day, like you want it to be God's
Yeah.
word, right? I absolutely agree with
I
that.
want the first thing I see to be God's word.
Mhm.
And then my manuscript. But if you go towards those admin things, that's the brain you're going to have for that day, and that's
Mm.
why I
Right.
think it's hard to go back to the creative.
Agreed. All right. So what are some other things besides social media that are administration duties? Well, checking your email. Again, that's another vortex that gets sucks me in. I love
Meetings,
getting yeah, I love getting email from readers, but it will distract me from my actual writing. So
yeah,
meetings. Oh yeah.
yeah,
There's a reason why we do our meetings with each other in the afternoon. And
mhm,
we do this podcast in the morning. Yes, because we don't write on Fridays. That was kind of one of our things that we said from the very beginning because then the rest of our day on Friday is kind of like it begins our weekend, right? Family
mhm,
time starts for me, especially as soon as the podcast is done. It's all about my kids and moving into the weekend and
yeah. And a lot of times we're packing up to go to the campground right after the
right,
podcast and stuff like that. So yeah,
right.
but yeah, meetings, collaborations. Um, I don't know, any classes that you want to take for your
Yes, we're sucker for classes, Tina. You and I, we love the webinars. We love learning new stuff, but Don't do them in the mornings or you're never
There's
gonna get your
this
writing done.
there's this one class I signed up for, and when you pay for it, you have it for life. And
Mm,
then every year that it starts over, there's been like little tweaks and little changes based on,
mhm,
things aren't the same as they were 4 years ago in a lot of ways. And
mhm.
I'm going through it again. And every time I go through it every year, and every year I learn something.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's awesome.
Marketing and promotion, I've kinda hinted at how, getting deeper into marketing and advertising kinda had sucked the life out of my writing career, and I've not really processed it entirely because it also coincided with my mom dying, and then
Right.
last year my brother died, and I feel like I'm still mourning, and I really appreciate everybody's patience with me, like, still tuning in and listening to me even though I feel like I am, like, the worst example of what an indie author should be. But I'm still going through stuff. But I've hinted at that, and because I'm still processing it. But again, I think that like it you even if you have a good handle on your advertising and your marketing promotion and it doesn't overtake your creativity, you got to put it in the afternoon. Do not even look at it or touch it in the morning.
And the only caveat to that would be if you're the kind of person who says, I'm going to write Monday and Tuesday and do all the admin on Wednesday and then write again on Thursday, then that would be like, that
Hmm.
would also work. If you're just going to spend a whole day doing admin.
Hmm. That's true. That is very true. That's actually a good point. Um, okay. So I think everyone understands admin stuff. I mean, like newsletters, writing your newsletter. Yes, we understand that that's writing, but it's still
But
administration
it's a
stuff.
different headspace than the creative writing that you do when you're writing a book. It's
It is
so
a
different.
different it pulls you out of your story, right? I guess
Hmm.
that would be a good thing. Anything that pulls you out of the world that you're writing in at that point, which again, so if you're writing, like Tina mentioned, like if you're writing two different books, this would be a good way of splitting it up between morning and afternoon. If you're writing two different like if you're writing fiction and nonfiction, put the nonfiction in the afternoon. It's different headspace. So
Yeah.
all right. So now,
So,
if you're lucky enough to be able to have 3 writing sessions, morning, afternoon, and evening, this is how we would split up now the evening. So you've done your morning session, you've done your admin afternoon session, and now it's evening time. You've had dinner, and now you're going into the evening. So what would the final writing session kind of look like? Now,
well,
first of all, full transparency, we don't do this. I
yeah, that's
don't
what I was going to say.
we still have families, and so we don't have that, but there are people that have this ability, and this is what we think it should look like,
Or
right?
sometimes there's people that don't have the morning and afternoon because they have a full-time job
Right.
during
So
those times, and evening is their only writing time.
which if it were me, I would take what we're saying about morning session and slip it into the evening session. Or if
Right.
you can start afternoon, you can't start in the morning, you have maybe you work mornings, take your morning session and slip it into the afternoon. But so if you have a third one, um, I guess it just bases on your own individual needs, right, Tina? Like this
Right.
is like
And
kind of
some
open.
people are more creative in the evening, and some people are more creative in the morning. And so you have to know yourself, and you have to
Yeah.
know how you operate. And if the evening is the best time for you, then do it in the evening. But I would say everything that we said about the morning session applies to an evening session if you're using that as a creative time.
Right. So specifically so in our third evening our evening session, which is the third session, specifically when we say we don't do this, we're talking about writing. So the first thing you can do in the evening session is writing. We don't do that. That's the first thing. The second thing that you could do or we think you should do is relaxation and downtime. And yes, this is part of the day of a writer. It doesn't this is very important for us as writers is
Hmm.
balancing that work and that personal life, because you'll burn out, your family's gonna burn out. You've gotta make sure you have a balance. So
Right.
right.
Right. So spending time with your family, self-care is a part of that.
Mm.
And for me, self-care often means, and because my husband likes to keep the AC on winter, um, I put some warm, cozy pajamas on and get a blanket and a book, a
Mhm,
good, really good, well-written book, and I just kind of
mhm.
slide into my story that I'm reading.
Yeah, great time to be writing because I think that reading, sorry. 'Cause I think it's really important to read if you're also a writer.
Mm,
But I also think it's okay to binge the latest version of the Great British Baking Show. Like, Tina got me hooked on the kid version. If you've not seen this and not watched the kids doing the baking, you're missing out. It's so funny.
it
So
is.
that's something I binge with my kids, and it's okay for you to have that time just in the evening to, like, binge on brainless stuff that, doesn't feel like it's part of your writing day, but really it is because you have to balance your life out.
Or you could binge on British detective series like Vera.
Mm.
If you're looking for a really good British detective show, Vera
Mhm.
is awesome. Just
Oh,
saying.
awesome. I'll have to try that.
She's my age, and she's a
Mhm.
homicide detective, and she's very quirky, and she doesn't drive herself very often. She has this young man drive her around, and he's like her partner. It's just so great.
That's awesome.
It's a great show. Anyway, I could go on and on. Let's not get off this track.
So the last suggestion that she and I have for you that I kind of feel like maybe would be the best suggestion that we make out of the entire day schedule is preparing for the next day. Tina, I'm gonna let you take this. What are some of the things that you do that prepare you to set you up for success for the next day?
Well, just like I said that I have morning habit stacks, and
Mhm.
not one domino knocks over the next, and it's kind of my routine.
Mhm.
Um, One of those things in my habit stack for bedtime is to look at my manuscript, to open
Mhm.
it up, either look at what I wrote that day, or I look at the notes that, or maybe I'll redo both. Look at the notes that I made
Mhm.
for what I want to write the next day. Sometimes I might journal a little bit if I'm not sure what's coming for the next day.
Mhm.
And I don't say this is what I'm going to do. I'll journal and say, I might do some what if things, or I might say this is where I want to end up. But I do that almost like the right before I brush my teeth and fill my CPAP mask up with water. Like that.
Mhm.
So that's like right before I go to bed. And there's something about the brain, especially if
Mhm.
you have high intellection,
Mhm.
there are times I've gone to bed and having no clue what's gonna supposed to happen in the next scene the next day, and
Mhm.
woke up. I did this exercise where I look at my manuscript. Woke up the next morning, it's just there.
Yeah,
My
that's
brain
awesome.
figured it out while I was sleeping.
So I'm similar, but for me, the thing that helps me the most is not so much preparing for the creative part of my day, but preparing for the admin part of my day. Me or just the rest of the day, is making a list of things that I have to get done because that's the stuff that will distract me as I'm writing or as I'm trying to focus on my career is all these other things in my life that need my attention, all these appointments I have to make, all these things I have to buy at the grocery store, all that stuff. And if I can make a list of it that I know I can look at later and I know it's
Yeah,
over there and I'm not going to forget anything, that helps me as well. So the night before, if I can make a list of all the admin things I need to do and all the family things I need to do, that helps me as well to be prepared for the next day.
right. And I
Not
think the key is to have systems in
Mhm.
place. Like these
Yes.
habit stacks are systems.
Mhm.
The idea that you need to make a grocery list and make an appointment at the doctor and um, call about whatever and clean the house and those things that you've written them down and they're scheduled for a particular time of the day
Mhm.
clears them out of your brain. Take and if you think of your brain as a train track and you have all these different thoughts on the tracks
Mhm.
and you have too many, they're clogging up all the tracks and no trains can move because it's too overcrowded. So then when you do that, you take those trains off the track and you set them over here. And
Mhm.
then it gets the trains that you want to be moving.
Mhm.
And that's what systems do. And it's just like I don't know, I guess it's not a fancy word, but it's just a technical word that means you have a plan.
Right.
You have a plan for your day and you've um like even if you're not somebody who can follow a schedule, you can at least know in the afternoon is when I do this and the morning
Right.
is when I do this. And
Right.
it kind of separates it so your brain can focus on what you're doing.
Yes, love that. And Piper says, "Lists make such a difference for me," she says. And I agree. So I would love to hear what our listeners have to say. I would love to know how, like, you guys split your days up, what your day looks like. So we would love for you guys to join us over at our Facebook group. And we can start, maybe we can start a thread over there, Tina, that will allow people to go in and kind of put what their most important or what their best advice is to like have for your schedule for your day. So we invite you to do that. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, it's free, it's easy. It's the link is in the show notes. So just come on over
Yeah,
and join
just make
us.
sure you answer the questions so that I can let you in.
Right. So okay, now it's time for our favorite part of the week, and it's the feeding of the backs. If you are new to us, this is when we give feedback on something that we wrote live right before we went live. So there's no editing, there's no revision done. So we only give positive and encouraging feedback. It's not like a regular writing group situation. So Tina, will you tell us what the prompt was, and will you read to us what you wrote?
Now, I don't know how if this is pronounced Jean or Jeanne, but it's a sentence, and so we're supposed to use the sentence as it is in the story, which I did not do. I totally meant to,
All
but I never got there. So Jeanne
right.
wished she had chosen the red button.
All
That
right.
was the prompt. And I decided to write in my detective story that I'm writing. So
Okay.
the alpenglow on the Chugach Mountains painted the world pink as Detective Reese drove toward Muldoon Road. Another late night, which meant nothing now that Carol had gone to Oregon to stay with her mom. He missed her, and their nightly calls, which consisted of him trying to maintain a conversation and her mumbling mm-hms and slow yes. Oh, wait not to finish a sentence, Tina. I put a period at the end of that. He wanted to ask if she'd been taking her medication, but knew it would only make her defensive. He could hear her saying, "In case you didn't know, I am an adult." He
Mhm,
sighed. She was technically an adult, but ever since Susie, she'd been sucked so deeply into her grief that he often felt like he was caring for a child. He tried not to dwell on the relief he felt when she told him she was going. If he did, he was afraid the guilt would cripple his mind and render him useless. He pushed it into the same box where he kept the thoughts of what he imagined Susie's last moments had been, and closed the
mhm,
lid tight, wrapped around twice with duct tape, and shoved into the far recesses of his mind. Yet
mhm.
sometimes, like tonight, God painted the mountainside pink and drew his eyes to the slope where they'd finally found their baby girl,
Oh,
reminding him of the night Joy had died along with his heart.
mm,
Words the pastor had read just yesterday echoed through his mind. I will take their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. Detective Reese knew his heart was slowly turning back into stone, and if he didn't do something about it, if he waited too long, he couldn't bring himself to consider the consequences. At the red light, he closed his eyes, trying to swallow the lump that lodged in his throat. There were two missing kids. He needed to focus. Instead, tears fell unbidden from the corner of his eyes. He flipped on his turn signal, turning right on the red, and headed back toward the Turnagain Arm, driving without thinking about where he was going, but knowing the destination. When he pulled into the church parking lot, there was one car there, the blue Buick Century that appeared to be just as old as its name. The fact the pastor
mm,
drove that car instead of some shiny new SUV made Detective Reese like him even more.
mhm.
As he approached the door, Pastor John opened it as if he'd been expecting him and led him into the kitchen where a fresh pot of coffee was already brewing. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Pastor John's words demolished what was left of Detective Reese's defenses, and he collapsed into the pastor's arms like a little boy who just lost his best friend.
Tina, so good. My favorite line is driving the Buick Century that looked as old as its name. Love that. That was such a great line.
Oh, thanks.
Um, I love this story. I love this character. I love how broken he is. Like even when he's like solving a crime and you're not having moments like this. You just feel this like underneath, like that this guy is carrying around this weight of like, and then the empathy. I feel like this guy, we talked about empathy before we went live. I feel
Hmm.
like this character has high empathy that he also like is like he carries around the weight of this murder mystery, not just like, oh, it's my job, I got to solve it, but like it's a something that's hanging around his neck. And I just love how you write him. So well done.
Awesome.
Really
Thank
love
you.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like writing him.
Mm,
And I really uh I always felt like the scenery around me when I was growing up, because this is my hometown I'm reading about.
mhm.
Like it always seemed to paint the world with emotion. Like I don't know how to describe it, but I always, people talk about the call of the wild, like it's
Yeah.
like a real live thing, and I
Mhm.
really felt that growing up. Like the call of the wild
Mhm.
was a real, and I could understand how the natives thought that everything had a spirit,
Yeah.
because of
Uh-huh.
the way that the nature just seemed to be a living thing that seemed to respond to what was going on in my head, in my heart, or maybe my
Mhm.
head and heart were responding to the world. I don't know. But God's creation, like I could not grow up there and not believe in God. It wasn't possible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I just love writing about it.
Yeah, that's great. Other people agree with me. Piper says, "Oh my gosh, Tina, heartbreaking. I can identify with the rhythms. I'm so with the mhm and disconnected conversations. So glad he could find help at church." Catherine Carroll says, "Wow." And Purpose Behind the Pen says, "Loved it, Miss Tina, especially with you using one of my favorite verses from the Book of Psalms." So
Oh, awesome.
yeah, that was great.
Thank
All
you.
right. So I actually did use the sentence. However, I changed the sentence because I write historical. And there's not a lot of like I guess I could have wrote it as like a regular button that you sew on clothing. Oh, that's a miss. Darn it. But I
I don't know
changed
why she would be pushing it.
oh yeah. No, it's chosen. The word is it
Oh,
says
chosen.
chosen the red
I was
button.
thinking of pushing a button like in my
Yeah, me
brain.
too.
And
Me too. That's why.
I
Yeah.
think in my brain I was thinking about his wife hanging up on him,
Mm.
like pushing the red button, but I never, like, I got
Ah, I got there.
distracted by like all the emotion that he was going through.
Yeah, I'm glad you got distracted because that was great. Okay, so here's mine. And I think it's pronounced Jean, and that's how I'm gonna read it because that's how it's in my head. It
It's,
doesn't really matter.
do you?
Jean sat up in bed. Something had woken her, but she wasn't certain what. Then she heard it, a scratching. She grabbed a robe from the bedpost and quickly slipped it on. She quietly crept down the hall, careful that her bare feet avoided the looser wood planks whose creak might give her away. As she entered the kitchen, the scratching sound became louder, and it was obvious that the sound was coming from the door. Someone was trying to pick the lock. Jean searched frantically for her shotgun, but it was nowhere in sight. Realizing she must have left it in the barn, she began searching for another weapon with which to defend herself. She threw open a cupboard and saw two bottles, leftover relics of her deceased husband's drinking problem. She grabbed the red one, then paused. As the moonlight glowed through a crack in the window curtain, it cast a beam of light across the beautiful cut design of the heavy, thick red glass. She made a quick decision that the red bottle was too beautiful to destroy. She hastily slid it back in the cupboard and grabbed the second bottle, a dusty, brown, half full bottle of whatever concoction her husband used to drink. Jean turned just in time for the door to slowly open. She held the bottle over her head and waited for a head to appear. And when it did, she quickly brought the bottle down onto the head of the intruder. Brown shards of glass shattered everywhere, and Jean was left holding the neck of a broken bottle and staring at a hulking man that seemed completely unfazed by the thin pieces of glass that lay around him. It was in that moment that Jean wished she had chosen the red bottle.
Oh, that's awesome. Is this going to make it into any of your stories?
I don't know. Like, my plan was it not to like make it in, but honestly, even though her name is Jean, I wrote it as if it was uh Colleen. So we'll see.
When you first said scratching sound, I was thinking, oh, she's got mice or
Ugh.
like.
I don't even want to write about mice. Ugh, I hate mice.
Yeah, I love your I love the way you write the Old West. It's
Oh,
just
thanks.
like I feel like it's a familiar place.
Mm.
Um and I mean that as a compliment. Like
Oh,
I
thank
don't know if you take it that way, but
I do.
it
Yeah.
just feels like slipping your foot into those old slippers that you
Mm.
that you probably should have thrown away a long time ago, and how they fit your
Yeah.
like, it just feels familiar, like, from my days of watching Little House on the Prairie and,
Yeah.
those kinda shows, like
Mhm.
Gunsmoke and oh, what was the other one I used to watch? Actually, it was my dad that watched Gunsmoke, but
Mhm.
anyway, like, I immediately go back to those images in my head
Right.
of those shows and those movies that I've seen, and it just feels comfortable, and I love that. I love and then, something like the hulking creature character in the dark, like, breaking in,
Mhm.
and, like, you can't call the police.
Right.
There's no phones to call the sheriff or so you're, like,
Mhm.
up to your own devices, a woman alone. Yeah,
Mhm.
just I love the suspense, and I don't know, I just loved it.
I love that you say that because this is something I've been kinda struggling with too, because as I research the West, there's so many things that you learn because I grew up on those shows too. Little House on the Prairie, Bonanza. I used to watch, Big
Bonanza.
Valley. Yeah, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Big Valley, like, with my so, um, but you learn that, like, those were not entirely, accurate,
Of
obviously,
course.
but that's what I grew up with, so when I write, I think that's a huge reference and just the feel. So for me as a historical writer, I need to balance with, like, what is like you said, like, what's comfortable for people, right? I want it to feel comfortable. I want it to feel like an old shoe you slip your foot into, but also be accurate. So, like, what I've learned is that the everything doesn't have to be accurate, like, you don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be a history lesson every chapter, or it doesn't, right? So you just have to, like, give enough, like, teach enough about the trueness of what it was like to live there, and then the rest of it just feels good. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Without lying about, like, I'm definitely not someone who wants to, like, make it out as if, like, if you live back then that, you're gonna have an easy life. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I also
right.
don't want it to be so miserable, so.
And there's something to be said about not the best writer in the world could ruin a book by putting too much detail in.
Mhm.
And you want to put the historical. So as an example, last night I just finished a book by a very well-known author,
Mhm.
probably more well-known for the movies that have been made out of his books that
Okay.
are like these very cerebral, kind of very emotional, tear-jerky kind of movies.
Okay.
And then again, this was one of those books, and it was a little bit of a slow read,
Mhm.
but it was about a heart surgeon whose wife he becomes a heart surgeon because his best friend has a heart defect when they're
Mhm.
children. He ends up marrying her, falls in love, and he vows that he's going to go to college and learn how to fix her heart.
Mhm.
And she ends up dying
Mhm.
from heart for her heart gives out before they
Mhm.
can find her a new heart. And he kind of goes into this grief, and so he's like hiding out, pretending to be someone else. And there's this little girl selling lemonade on the side of the road, and he knows immediately that she has the same heart defect as his wife because he could just tell by the way she coughs and like.
Mm.
And as the story goes on, he eventually comes out of hiding to fix this
Mhm.
little girl's heart. Sorry, if you know what book I'm talking about, I just gave you a major spoiler
Oh,
right there. But the descriptions of the heart surgery, I feel
we're not necessary?
like okay, this is not a textbook
Right.
of how to do heart surgery. Like it actually said, and in his mind he reviewed how this artery was going to match with that, and then and the diffusion and the like. It was just very medically technical.
Mhm.
And, I did skip a few pages, even though this guy is awesome. He writes poetically, which is just something that is near and dear to my heart, like, writing that could almost be poetry. Like, I
Mhm.
love that. But then he got to this part, and he described every bit of that heart surgery,
That's funny.
and it
Do you
reminded me of this show I've been watching called The Resident.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's on Netflix or if it's on Prime, but it's about medical residents, and one of the residents wants to be a heart surgeon, and they
Mhm.
literally show heart surgery on the show, and like each little, and I felt like I was watching that show. Like that's how technical it
Oh,
was.
wow.
But I don't know why I went down that rabbit trail.
Do you remember way back when, I've shared this story a couple times, when I was first writing, my first book, which came out 3rd, but I spent hours researching, how to, like, cook a chicken, like, how, like, to take a chicken, for a live chicken, and till you could fry it up as fried chicken, and I stayed up way too late, and I wrote this whole amazing chapter, like, it was great, it was 3,000 words, and it was, like, and I was very careful about how graphic I was. It was really great. And I got up the next morning and I read it. I'm like, I just wrote a chapter about butchering a chicken. Nobody wants to read a chapter about butchering a chicken in a romance. What was I thinking? But it was one of those moments. It was like it
Yeah,
was
not
pretty
unless like she's totally like it's the first time she's ever done it, and she
it
just
well it
can't get
was
over the guilt. Like,
well, it was, but it still didn't move the story forward. Remember we've talked about that
right?
before too. So
Yeah,
all right, Piper says, "Oh, that was scary. I remember being a teen and being afraid of someone outside trying to stay quiet so he wouldn't know we were inside. How scary it would have been if we had tried and failed to stop him." I remember as a kid, my brother and I had a whole plan that if anyone ever broke into our house, where we were going to hide, what we were going to like. We had this whole what in the world? What kind of shows do we watch back in the 80s? I
yeah.
don't even know.
I had a boyfriend who was stalking me when I was in high school,
Mm,
and he lived on the other side of town. And Anchorage is a big, like, spread out town. He
mhm.
literally rode his bicycle 20 miles, I think,
Oh wow.
to my house, and he was outside and he was like checking all the doors and windows of the
Oh.
house. And my mom and I were in the stairwell, you couldn't see because there was a lot of windows in our house.
Mhm.
And we were just like sitting on the stairs hoping he couldn't see us.
Oh wow, that's scary.
Yeah.
SL Parent says, Jen, I feel like I'm in the room with her and the intruder, so much tension. Fantastic. Thank you. Uh, Piper says, I love a paranormal series written by a former nurse, and I feel like the medical information gets a bit too detailed for non medical readers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably medical readers probably love it, but
Yeah.
so,
If you're a heart surgeon, you're going to love that end
right.
of that book that I just read.
And then for me, honestly, like I wasn't gonna target chicken butcherers, so I got rid of the chapter. All right. All right, we are already over time, Tina. So let's rush
Oh,
through our
no.
what's next. Tina, what is next with you?
I'm just here with my mom in the Pacific Northwest. And the water is about 2 blocks that way. The Puget Sound, which is kind
Mhm.
of it's uh it's a step up from the lake, but not quite an ocean.
Mhm.
So I just love it. It has a tide, so like the tide goes out and the tide comes in. So I'm just happy. I'm just gonna hang out with my mom and help her out and enjoy my time with her.
So, same with me. My oldest natural child. I have stepchildren, but is going off to college in just a couple weeks, and I'm just my total focus is on spending time with her, getting her ready, healing my knee, and yeah. So, um, having said all of that, Tina and I have talked about it, and the best decision for us and our families is we're going to take a break for the rest of the month. It is really difficult when it's just two of us to try to keep a balance between our families and the podcast. And we appreciate all of you that still show up. And I hope that you all understand that we need to take a few weeks off because then the end of the month, the last Friday is Labor Day weekend, which again is generally a family weekend for both of us. So we will be back fresh and ready to give you guys updates on what's happening with our families and our writing when it comes to the first Friday in September,
Right.
which
We do have a live Q&A this Sunday night at 7
that's we
Eastern
yes
time. If you're a
for our
member
Patreon.
of our Patreon on the $5 or higher level.
Right, and if you aren't, it's still time to go join, our Patreon, and you can join us with the live Q&A.
Yep.
All right. So we will see you guys. Piper says, totally understand, even if I'll miss the podcast. Well, we thank you. We appreciate that. We do miss you guys. We just
Yeah.
got to prioritize our lives. So
Yeah. And getting up at 5:30 in the morning and trying to think straight and be make sense when I talk.
it's
Not a
been
good.
very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a rough day.
Right. All right. And so until September 6th, may your pen be prolific and may your deadlines be met and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye.